I'm sitting here, am I too far? Like, can you see me? Or am I? Can you hear me now? Seriously, I mean, I'm questioning is whether or not it should be more this way. What is better for your sight line? Oh.
Are you the question asker?
No, I'm not. Are you kidding, Lauren? I'm just trying to figure out, this was supposed to vary that way, and I'm just trying to make it a little more this way. Patrick's going to just yell at me, so it doesn't matter.
Test, test. Whew.
Okay. Because I want him to be able to look at you, but also, but it's more important for you guys to see that way.
Yeah. Hmm? That's a great idea. I was gonna use an F word. How would that go? What do you think? With you, you would like it. Oh boy.
So, is Lauren here? Oh, so we're going to start. Wow, everyone got quiet so quickly. We're going to start in just another moment or so. The Torah. I don't think you were here for that, Eric. All right. Shacharit starts at 9:30, Eric. 9. Yeah. Just okay. So talk amongst yourselves. We have another minute or so, and we'll be right there.
Test, test.
Test, test, test. That's right, let's go. No, just because I've already had 4 cups of coffee. I'm going right. I have to. Oh, I would try that. No, it's like a steamed coffee. No, I'm not doing it instant. Right. No, it's like
Live control started at 1 o'clock. It was set till 3:30, and I said, "There's no way. If they're still here at 3:30, we have
I can do
a
that.
real bad day here."
I don't love this anyway.
Already talked to them.
To unwind it?
Isn't Warren supposed to be here? Hockey player? Where is he? I'm not staying long, but
A last reminder, if anyone's interested in the Q&A, we're going to begin right now. So if you're interested in the Q&A, come on into the sanctuary.
I don't mind holding. I won't do very much.
No, you don't have to do anything. I'll just
Okay.
make sure that people have questions. That's the first one.
So good afternoon, everyone. I just want to start by just thanking everyone for being here. We know that after a long morning of services and plates filled with food, that the nap exactly, everyone's yawning, and the nap is compelling. But to enter into conversation with Jill is a really important. Is an important exercise for us as a community. And so I just want to briefly begin by reminding everyone the process of what it is exactly that we are doing and where we are in that process, and then just a clarification about what we're actually doing this moment. So as you may remember, 2 years ago or so, we laid out a vision for the synagogue, which sort of looked at our engagement in two different buckets, or delineated between youth engagement and adult engagement. That we recognize the need to be specific and intentional in the methods in which we interact with our younger communities. And for that, we hired Rabbi Emily Holtzman 2 years ago, and that's been really a great asset to our community. And we also recognized that we wanted to nurture and develop other types of adult connections, that the prism of children shouldn't be the exclusive prism with which people interact or engage Judaism. And so it was our intention to hire a director of adult engagement / rabbi. That search, and we had some candidates and we had some people pass through, was successful in that we decided that we were not going to move forward with any of our finalists, that we did not find the right match. And the committee at the time, I think, wisely decided that we would rather wait for the right person than hire any person. And so at that time, we were in a little bit of a rabbinic crunch, and we were very blessed, of course, to kind of happen upon Rabbi Leslie Alexander, who agreed to join us on an interim basis until we were able to conclude that search. Now, we have some other plans for Rabbi Alexander. Shh, don't tell anybody yet, but this position and this search continued. And so Lauren Fife and the search committee reconvened in the fall, shortly after the high holidays, and we began a process that we had begun 2 years earlier of interviewing candidates for the rabbinic position. So I think for the rabbinic position, that is Director of Adult Engagement. And so I think to date in this cycle, we've interviewed roughly a dozen candidates between screenings and such. And we received resumes. We had a screening process. Candidates who were deemed kind of like roughly suitable were moved to a second round, in which they engaged in an interview all online with our full search committee. And then those who, then based on that, we decided would be the final round, or inviting candidates for a Shabbat here with Adat Ariel. So we, I think, have had about 12 of the folks, the rabbis, made it through the screening to the screening process. From that, about 5 or 6 second round interviews, and from that batch, we invited one candidate to date to this point, which is our rabbinic intern, Jill Gold-Wright. So I wanted to, our process is not necessarily over. We have some other folks who we're in conversation with, and so that is where we stand as a congregation, and as I think is a fair synopsis of the committee's work to date. The point of this session is an opportunity. Most of us have had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Jill, but not everyone has, or it could have been something else. You may be thinking of something, or you may want to say, wait a second, I've never talked to Jill about this, and you want to know what Jill thinks about a particular subject. So this is going to be an open opportunity for people to engage in a Q&A with Jill. What I ask is that you remember that Jill is an English teacher, and inquiries end with questions. We're not looking for declarations. We're looking for inquiries, questions. Now, you can, if you want to have a confession, that could kind of be fun, but like just declarations, that you think that's great, and we want to hear what you think, but not this afternoon. We want to hear what Jill thinks this afternoon. So please think about your question, kind of shape your question in a succinct manner, and that way I think it'll better assure the dialogue. And I also just, there are different people here with different views and with different thoughts, and that we just want to keep a respectful tone and engage Jill and one another in the manner that is appropriate for Adat Ariel, and appropriate for our relationship with Jill, and are appropriate for being in the house of God. Okay, so without any further ado, Lauren, did I want to turn things over to you for a second? Yeah, okay, so I'm going to turn over to our, by the way, Lauren, I'm going to ask the chair, the committee, the search committee, those members of the search committee who are here, just to stand for a brief moment. Yes, please. And they've worked really, really hard in procuring this process and assuring that that we're working on behalf of Adat Ariel and the betterment of our community. It's been dozens of hours of work, and we are really appreciative of them. So I'm going to turn things over to Lauren Fife, the chair of our committee, and here we go.
Thank you, Rabbi. Yeah, can everybody hear me? Great. I want to, number one, welcome you to Adat Ariel. Not that you've been away, but it's just great to have you here today for this Q&A. And I hope that people are comfortable asking challenging questions. And I know that there'll be hopefully we'll engage in machloket l'shem hashamayim. Got to swallow this one? Okay, great. Okay. So for those of us who haven't had the pleasure, the opportunity to spend with you, could you talk to us a little bit about, as an accomplished woman, as somebody who has had a very successful career, a PhD in literature, you've been a teacher for decades. You suddenly decided, not suddenly, but you decided to become a rabbi. Could you tell us a little bit about your process, your thought process, what motivated you, and what you found difficult about that process?
Sure. Thank you so much. And Lauren, just thank you and all the rest of the members of the committee for inviting me. And indeed, I've definitely been made aware of how many hours there are invested in being on a search committee, having been on a few myself. So I'm really very grateful for the time and the invitation and the opportunity. It was not a sudden decision. It was a kind of a long process. I have been on faculty at Mount San Antonio College. I am now in my 26th year of teaching full-time. I got the job when I was 12 years old, if you're doing the mental math right now. And that job has been an incredibly wonderful gift to me for my whole life. I went and did a master's degree at Claremont Graduate School, was invited to stay in the doctoral program, to stay on. At the same time, I began teaching part-time at Mount SAC. I was an adjunct professor. I was definitely expecting to be one of those freeway flyer adjunct professors. There are many people who have a very difficult time landing a full-time job. I was asked to apply for a full-time job after being there for just 6 months. And I thought, that's crazy. But they said, well, just do it because it's good experience anyway to interview and to have an application done. So I put it together. There were 250 applicants, and they hired 4. And I was one of the people they hired. So what that meant was that the following fall, I was teaching full-time and working on my doctorate full-time. I did not move to a part-time basis for either of those things. So I worked really hard in those years. I wasn't married at the time, and so obviously didn't have kids at the time. So I just worked and worked a lot, and learned a lot and loved it. I mean, don't feel sorry for me. It was an incredible, amazing experience to be in the classroom as a student part of the week and in front of the classroom as a professor for part of the week. And that experience of teaching and learning, of studying and writing and grading and all of those things at the same time really showed me in a real way how both teaching and learning are vulnerable but amazingly expansive things to do. And I love school. I love everything about school. I mean, the homework I don't love, and the grading I don't love, but the learning I love. And so, anyway, maybe in all of those years, I was preparing to go back to school again. I don't know. But I completed my PhD in 2003. And continued, I earned tenure after a couple of years at Mount SAC, and so I continued as a tenured professor. My dissertation was published in 2009, the same year that my daughter Allegra was born, so I kind of felt like I had 2 babies that year. And I've been at Mount SAC happily for, like you said, decades. On the eve of turning 50, I was starting to feel a little spilky. And it was mostly because I didn't feel like I was learning that much anymore. I had done a lot at Mount Sac. I often change up my syllabi and change my readings and this kind of thing. So I was keeping it fresh in that way, but I didn't feel like I was really learning that much anymore. And I was feeling a little bit intellectually staid, and also a little bit like I still love this job, but I don't think I'm going to love it until I'm 65 or 67 years old. And I really started to think about doing something else, and talked to a lot of people. And some people said, well, you should write another book. And I was like, no. Well, you should try to get a job at a four-year university. Nah, that's not that different. Well, you should publish some articles. Well, I've already published some articles. What I really want is to learn something different. I don't want to write another article about American musical theater. Like, I loved that topic and love that topic still, but I just didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to do something else, and I wanted to learn, and I wanted to think, and I love language, and I love text, and I was a Spanish minor as an undergrad, and I thought, well, I'm fairly good at Spanish. I want to dig into a different language, and not just any language, but of course our language, right? The language that I was hearing when I was going to shul, and the language that I was practicing when I was, working with my kids for the B'nai Mitzvah, and the language that I sang songs in, and I wanted to know it in a different way than what I knew. So the other thing that was happening at that time is that my son was becoming bar mitzvah. And the reason that's significant is because when he was a fifth grader, I was on a sabbatical from teaching, and I ended up teaching his fifth grade religious school class at Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center. It was not supposed to be that way. I was supposed to meet the class for like the first 3 weeks, and then it needed to be the first 5 weeks, and then it was like the first 7, and finally I was like, fine, I'll just teach it. And so those kids were all my kids from that year. So when they were all becoming B'nai Mitzvah, I was the one who gave them all of their charges. And so I was on the Bima as I was part of the davening team, and I was giving the B'nai Mitzvah kids their charges, and I was part of the educational committee, and I was like doing a lot of synagogue work. And I thought, come on, dummy, right? It's right in front of you. Text and language and reading and interpretation and learning something new and digging into our tradition more than I had. And then the other thing, I think, was that I was yearning for a connection with people that was different from the connection that I could have with my students. So I was connected with my students, and I would say am connected with my students, but not in the way that you can be connected as somebody who works in a spiritual home. So I contacted a couple of different rabbinical schools, actually the 3 that were in Los Angeles, and I said, this is me. I'm an older student. I have a career. I have a family. I have a mortgage. I can't go to Israel for a year. I need to keep my full-time job. And 2 of the rabbinical schools said, you sound lovely, but that's not our program. And 1 rabbinical school said, you sound lovely. Why don't you come check us out? So I took 1 class first before I matriculated, and that class was in Talmud. It was a little winter intercession class, and it was a 10-day introductory class, and on day 4, I said, I'm doing this. And it has been nothing but delightful. It's been hard work, but there's not been one day in the past 5 years that I've sat down and said to myself, like, what was I actually thinking? This is a mess, because now I'm in something that I don't want to be in. Not one moment. And so that's why I say that it wasn't sudden. There was a lot of soul searching that went into it. There was a lot of thinking about it. There was a lot of talking to my husband and my family, like, is this something that we can really do? And we did it.
And congratulations on being very close to smicha now. Can you tell us, you've been in school now for 5 years, right? You've spent a couple of years here at Adat Ariel as a rabbinic intern. What do you find most troubling about Judaism?
Wow, about Judaism. I want to answer that question a little bit the way I answered when I was asked that question on Zoom with the committee. And I think what I find troubling about Judaism is actually one of my favorite things about Judaism, which is that we're always supposed to put ourselves in trouble. I don't mean peril, right? I don't mean danger, but being troubled means being unsettled and being provoked to move down the path of understanding and of questioning and asking. And the entire Talmud is people who are feeling troubled about Judaism. I mean, that's what it is, right? I think this, but you think that, but you argue this, but I argue that. And there's a real richness to making sure that we're not intellectually staid, that we're not complacent, that we're not sitting and thinking that we know everything there is to know about everything. That's not Jewish. That's like the opposite of Jewish, right? We don't have dogma. We don't have set decisions about things all the time. And so it's sometimes very uncomfortable to constantly be putting ourselves in trouble's way. But that's how we grow. And that's what the human experience is. That's what the human experience is we're constantly, I mean, this is what I tell my literature students. There's no plot without conflict, right? There's no plot without conflict. And there's no life without conflict. And there's no mode of thinking without conflict. And the conflict is something that I think we should embrace. We don't have to know everything all the time, because we don't, and we can't. So we may as well celebrate it and learn from it and grow from it.
Thank you. How do you harmonize the lack of dogma with halakha, and how do you bring halakha into your own life?
I'm going to answer that first by giving an example from American literature, if that's okay. Herman Melville's Moby Dick has often been called the greatest work of American fiction. It has also often been called the boringest damn thing that's ever been written. There are two parts of Moby Dick. There are the narrative chapters where we learn about Ishmael and Queequeg and Ahab and their whole thing. And then there are chapters about cetology, which is the study of whales. And they're very scientific. Herman Melville did his homework. At different times since Moby Dick's publication, people have tried to publish Moby Dick without the cetology chapters, because readers are like, I can't with this. It's too boring. And they just published the story. And it wasn't good. And it wasn't good because it was only halfway there. I think when people think about Talmud and they think about halakha and agadah, it's the same thing. If one tried only to live by halakha without looking at the storytelling kind of human aspect of it, or if one tried only to look at agadah and to completely disregard halakha, either one of those people would be the poorer for it, because neither one of those can exist without the other. For me personally, was not raised in a halachic upbringing at all. But I was raised Jewish, and I was raised with a lot of stories. And so, well, you know what? I actually want to retract that. I don't want to say I wasn't raised with halakha at all. There's a lot of stuff that we did Jewishly. Keeping kashrut was not one of those things. Being Shomer Shabbos was not one of those things. But lighting candles and having family dinners and celebrating the Chagim, that was for sure something that I grew up with. I went to Hebrew school, I became bat mitzvah, I went through a high school program, which was run through the Bureau of Jewish Education at the time called Chavrat Noar, Dor Chadash and Chavrat Noar. I then became a Chavrat Noar counselor. I was at Wilshire Boulevard Temple camps, both as a CIT and then all the way through to a senior counselor. I observed Shabbat in all of those different arenas. But I drove my car to get to places and did homework sometimes on Shabbat. I still do homework sometimes on Shabbat. I have to tell you the truth. And so halakha for me has been something that has informed my Judaism, but has not guided it in a way that some people live halachically. I think now, as after the 5 years, and I've learned how to read halakha in tandem with Agadah, I find incredible richness in both of those things, and am able to make better informed decisions about the way that I want to live halachically and Jewishly, that makes sense to me in my own spiritual life, and the things that don't make so much sense to me. I'll just say one more thing about that. Some people say, well, you can't cherry pick halakha, right? Like you don't get to do that. But I think in 2024, in a city like Los Angeles, we all kind of cherry pick halakha, because the way that our lives develop and function are not the way that lives were designed when Mishnah and Gemara and Talmud were being written. And so we have to travel with that Mishkan. And we build it, and we deconstruct it, and we go further down the path, and we build it, and we deconstruct it again, and we make it a place where God can dwell within us however we practice.
Thank you. I want to open it up to members of the Kahal who have questions. I'm going to let Eric.
I'm going to come right here.
Great.
Okay.
So the title, adult education, is a broad title, and adults
Sheila, sorry, could you identify yourself so people...
Oh, hi, I'm Sheila Lane. Hi, long-term member. The title adult education is a broad one. Adults could be defined from age, say, 22 on up. I won't end it at a high number. 122 sounds good. So I was just wondering what some of your plans are should you get the position.
Thanks very, very much for that question. Yes, there's a huge range, and how exciting that is, because it just means that there's a whole bunch of people who are here and ready and poised to be engaged in different ways. I think about myself and where I am in life as sometimes it's described as the sandwich zone. Right? I don't know if you've heard this term. The sandwich zone is kind of like adult kids on one side, sometimes aging parents on the other side, and having, lots of things that pull us in different directions. For a parent like me in a Jewish community where the kids are maybe out of the house entirely or heading out of the house or heading into college or anyway, post B'nai Mitzvah age, but who are not old enough to be retired and to maybe do things during the day like an MID type of program. Those kinds of people are here, but they need to be engaged much more. Because we're not doing Hebrew school classes anymore. We're not doing dinners. We're not hanging out with the other B'nai Mitzvah parents, right? We're not necessarily going to everybody else's simcha. You know, we're kind of out there. That's one subgroup of the congregation that I'm really interested in planning programming for. And that programming has to be around a work schedule, right? Or that program has to be around where the kids who are still in middle school or high school have stuff in the afternoon. So I can imagine scheduling something on a weeknight or on a Sunday evening or a Sunday afternoon. And I imagine that people in the sandwich zone also want to keep learning. Like, I don't think I'm that different that I was feeling intellectually stayed in my position, right? And so speakers, some sort of a text study, some sort of a class, and then social stuff. Right? Let's maybe not meet at shul. Let's meet and, go grab happy hour somewhere. Let's put together some sort of a something. Let's go to different people's houses. Let's make, we just saw the incredible success of a Havarah. I don't know anybody my age who's in a Havarah. Why not formulate those? So that kind of idea would be something I think wonderful for them. The younger students, we all know that when kids finish college, sometimes they come back home, right? And what does the congregation really have for those kids? I haven't seen that much, right? We've got lots and lots of stuff for the kids, but what do we have for the early 20s? Why don't we put a social together? I'm not talking about like a meet your future spouse kind of thing, right? But I'm talking about let's get together and again, go find a place to go grab a coffee or to go, hear a speaker or to go hear a band or to bring a band or a singer here. Oh, you play instruments? Let's do a jam session. Let's all just meet in somebody's living room and bring your instruments, right? It's not services and it's not shul, but it's fun and it's Jewish. Right? So those kinds of things I can really imagine doing. I would like for there to be, I know Rabbi Alexander taught an incredibly successful Talmud class on Saturday afternoons, after shul, after Kiddush. We should have a whole bunch of things to do on a Saturday after shul. I know naps are extremely, extremely tempting, but like maybe we could do something else. Maybe we could do a yoga class. Maybe we could do a meditation. Maybe we could do a different kind of text study. Maybe we could just sit around and hang out and just be together. I don't think that that it's impossible to get people to want to be here, but if you build it, they will come. Right? So, but you have to build it. You have to build it. Otherwise, they won't come because there's nothing to come for. Right? So, I hope that answers your question, Sheila, but those are actually, can I say one more thing about this? I had another idea that I started jotting down some ideas about this. You all know that I've been doing this Fourth Friday thing, and I've been working with people from Mazon and working with people from JQ International and all kinds of people. Well, I brought earlier this Jewish year, I brought the Midnight Mission to come. And after the Midnight Mission came, my own little nuclear family connected with some people there, and we went and served food to the unhoused of Los Angeles on Thanksgiving. And then we went back on Christmas Day, Christmas morning, and served a Christmas lunch and gave gifts to children who were there. The Midnight Mission is one example of a place where any single moment they need somebody. They serve 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, and usually somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 hungry people come through every single day. It's not just Thanksgiving and Christmas that they need help. So then I thought, there's all kinds of wonderful organizations that need help. And there's also some people, young adults, who want to find something spiritually meaningful besides the work that they do at their jobs or at home. So then I thought, I work at Mount SAC, which stands for San Antonio College, but what if I created a SAC here, Social Action Corps? And we said, you know what? Every other Thursday, we're gonna go and serve food at a homeless shelter, and then we're gonna go to dinner together, right? Or every Sunday morning, we're gonna go and do an environmental cleanup somewhere, and then have dinner at the beach, or have lunch at the beach, or have brunch, or whatever. There's a way to repair the world, to create connection, and to have super fun at the same time. So that's what I want to do.
Thank you.
I got one back here, Lauren.
Thank you. I'm wondering what the campus climate, sorry. My name's Vanya Green Aswiad. I have 3 boys, aged 13, 11, and 6. I'd like to know what the campus climate is like vis-a-vis Israel, how students have been feeling, how you've dealt with some of that, and how do you think that might carry over to your work here, especially related to students and how they're feeling both in school and at universities regarding Israel?
So I just want to make sure I understand. You're asking about the campus where I teach specifically, right?
And how that would then carry over here.
Got you. Thank you for that question. Mount SAC is the largest community college in California, which is pretty amazing because most people have never heard of it. But it's the largest community college in California. It serves a mostly lower to kind of middle to lower socioeconomic student body. The college students there are not all straight out of high school. In fact, the average age when I started was 24, and now I think it's closer to 26. There's lots of returning adults. There are no residence halls there, so nobody lives there. Most people use it as it's a commuter school, and most people use it as a way to get ahead in their lives. So you would think, well, that's true of every college. Not necessarily. Sometimes people kind of go for a university education, and Mount SAC doesn't feel like that. Mount SAC feels like they're coming to do something. We have a large vocational program. There's lots of trade schools. We don't grant bachelor's degrees, so people are there to get a training or an associate's degree or a GED, right? So that they can transfer and they can move on to something else. There are, I think, 4 Jews at Mount SAC. I know of 4. I'm counting myself in that number. I don't think I've ever had a fully Jewish student. I sometimes have students say, I'm half Jewish. My mom is Jewish, my dad is Jewish, my stepdad is Jewish, whatever. And then if I talk to the student about it, I say, well, what kind of experience do you have with Judaism? Oh, I went to my cousin's wedding once. So there's not a knowledgeable Jewish presence at this school. There is a strong minority presence at the school, and there are many different minorities, but there is a strong Muslim student union at the school. There is no Jewish student union. There is no Hillel. There's no Chabad. There's no Jewish stuff at all. Like at all. It's not even like happy holidays with, a picture of a Christmas tree and a picture of something for Kwanzaa and a picture of a Hanukkah. Like there's not that. It's Merry Christmas at this school. And so there have been pro-Palestinian rallies at the school. Those rallies have not developed into anything beyond peaceful meetings. There's been chanting, there's been some fist waving, there has not been a need for a police presence. There has been, there's campus security, but there has been no violence that's broken out. There are posters and things like that. Most of my students don't really know what's going on, and if they know, it doesn't impact their lives. It just doesn't. That's a whole other conversation as to whether it's a good thing or not a good thing that what's happening in the world impacts their lives. But these are people who are working, sometimes 2 jobs, raising kids, living in their cars. They're not politically motivated, and they're not particularly well-versed. So that's my experience of what's happening at my campus. I have, in my 26 years of teaching there, I have not been politically motivated in the classroom about anything. Because that's not my job. My job is to teach English and composition, and that is what I do. I teach a lot of different viewpoints. I teach multicultural literature. We have open discourse. People are safe to say what they want. I establish that in my classroom, but I do not bring my own personal religious, political, ideological beliefs into the classroom, ever. I'll answer a question in an office hour. I'll answer a question in a classroom, but I won't put forth an agenda. I don't do it during presidential elections. I didn't do it during the invasion of Ukraine. I didn't do it during Darfur. I didn't do it during Bosnia, Herzegovina. That's not what I do there. This is not that job. This is a shul. This is a place for discussions of Israel. This is a place for discussions of who we are as Jewish people. And in a role as a student rabbi, my job here is different. I'm not teaching you thesis statements, right? We're here to talk about the hard stuff that impact us as Jews. So I don't actually see how this part of my life at Mount SAC will carry over to working here at all. It's a different thing. If students or student age people come to me here, that's a whole other story. And what I would like to do with those students and with congregants and with everybody in the community who is struggling with what is happening in the world is to be able to make space for being troubled. It's troubling. What's happening is, troubling is too simple of a word, but it's an example of the fact that people have deep, deep feelings about it, and that we need to be able to create space for those feelings, the whole range of feelings, so that we can understand how best to be supportive, how best to be loving, how best to work for healing, and how best to make sure that the Jewish communities all over the world continue to thrive and continue to be strong.
Mel?
Hi, I'm Mel, and I think most of you know my last name. So I have a question for...
Folks who are watching don't, so.
What I would like to know is a follow-up to Vanya's questions, and that is, what has been your experience and your feelings about Israel and Zionism, and how would you incorporate that into your rabbinate?
I've been to Israel twice. The first time I was in Israel was the summer after I became bat mitzvah. I went with my grandparents and my parents and my brother and another family. So it was a small group of, there were 10 of us, I think, 10 or 12 of us. We had a guide who took us to all the stuff you could imagine. There were a few moments where when we were on the freeways, we picked up some soldiers, some IDF soldiers who were hitchhiking and needed a ride. Those soldiers jumped on our little private bus and hung out with us and spoke with us. We took pictures with soldiers on Dizengoff Street and the streets of Tel Aviv. I remember thinking it was remarkable that people had Uzis on the street. That was something that was strange for me. But we felt safe, and we felt welcomed, and we had an amazing trip. The last time I was in Israel was 7 months ago. My husband and children and I joined a tour that was being run through Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center, which is where our family belongs. And it was a tour. There were maybe, how many people were on it, guys? 40, 60, whatever, something like that. 2 tour buses worth. We traveled with Cantor Ruth Berman Harris and her husband, who have lived in Israel and arranged all kinds of wonderful, amazing things for us. Some of the things I remembered the shrine of the book. I remembered riding a camel. I remembered floating in the Dead Sea. All of those things we did again, and it was amazing to do it 40 years later, something like that. She also arranged for us a meeting with Bedouins. We had a meeting with the Druze people, and we also had a meeting with some Jerusalem Arabs who came and spoke to us about what their experience of Yerushalayim is, which is different from the experience that we have. We celebrated 2 Shabbatot in Jerusalem. It was amazing. My kids remarked about all kinds of things that we just don't see normally. Mezuzot on every single door in the hotel where we stayed. Kids walking to school on Sunday morning because Shabbat was over and Sunday's a school day and a work day. The rhythms and the flow and the flavor, the walking, the fact that celebrating Shabbat in Yerushalayim, like everyone's doing it. Like obviously not everyone, but it's a cultural shift from what we experience here at home. By the way, one of those Shabbatot, we had Nava Tehillah with us and got to sing with them in person. What a joy that was. My experience, personal experience of Israel is this. Let me be very clear about it. Israel is the Jewish homeland. It is our state. It has always been our state. We have always been there. Israel is a sovereign place that deserves political sovereignty as well as spiritual sovereignty. It has the right to defend itself. It's what it's doing. And it is my deepest hope that Israel will continue to be a place where incredible accomplishments across the entire intellectual spectrum and the planting and the beauty will continue to flourish. I do not waver from that stance. I do have concerns about the political contemporary nature of the current prime ministry. I have serious concerns about Netanyahu's prime ministry. I had concerns about it before October 7th, and I have deeper concerns about it now. And does that mean that I don't stand with Israel? Certainly not. I have concerns about some American presidents, too. Deep ones. Does it mean that I don't stand for the United States and feel patriotic and feel connected to the United States of America? Of course not. But it's patriotic to question, and it's patriotic to push to be the best nation that one can be. And I don't think the United States of America is there yet, and I don't think that Israel is there yet. So what I would love to see as part of my rabbinate is how I can help to make sure that Israel continues to be a peaceful, loving, spiritual home for the Jews, because that is what it was founded for, and that is what it needs to continue to be.
Hi. Jill, like you, I think there are
Jim,
three...
identify yourself, please,
Sorry.
just so the folks, we got
Yeah.
folks watching on the live
Sure.
stream.
Thank you. Jim Lesserman, member for 30 some odd years. Jill, like yourself, I count at least 3 other rabbis who also have degrees in English literature. So what about that discipline prepares one well for the rabbinate, to be a good rabbi? And on the other hand, looking at things through that lens, where might it be limiting for more nuts and bolts, boring type of stuff? And I'll give you 2 examples. One, when do you start saying Kaddish if some relative's been cremated? Or is my sukkah kosher? Not dynamic things, but certainly congregants might have those questions.
Thanks so much for that, Jim. I'm actually going to answer your 2 questions in the opposite order that you presented them. I want to talk about what the downsides or maybe limitations, I think your word was, of having a teaching career or a degree in literature. Because I spent a good part of my learning in the secular world, and because I didn't grow up in a particularly religious or observant home, I don't know a lot of those details. I wouldn't be able to just have you shake me at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, what makes a sukkah kosher? I would probably say, why are you in my room at 3 o'clock in the morning? And then I would say, I know where to look that up when I get up at 7:30. There's a lot that I don't know because I spent a lot of time learning another field. And the 5 years of rabbinical school have done exactly what school is supposed to do. It's supposed to teach you how much you don't know about everything. I am very proud of what I've learned and excruciatingly aware of what I haven't learned and what I don't know. But I know how to look it up. I know how to how to research. I know how to research Jewish texts. I know how to research secular texts. I know how to conflate different resources. And I also know how to ask for help. I am 100% open to feedback, mentorship, advice, help. I have an incredible mentor in Rabbi Schuldenfrei. I have an incredible set of mentors in my faculty at AJR. And I know a lot of people in the rabbinate and cantorate now. We ask each other questions all the time and shoot each other resources all the time. So I don't feel scared about being asked a question that I can't answer, but I will need to say to a congregant, I'm going to need to look that up and do some reading and get back to you on it. I will get back to you, but I may not know the answer right now where somebody else would. The reason that I think that literature professors are so amenable to the rabbinate is because it's about studying text. That's what we do. We study text, and we analyze it, and we think about it, and we look for meaning, and there are all different kinds of ways to do that. Sometimes people talk about what's called bottom-up reading, which means it comes from the text to the head. Some people talk about top-down reading, which means it comes from the brain to the text. And there's a real synergy between text and the human mind, which to me is nothing less than sacred. And so that's why. I'll tell you one more little story that I just remembered. When I was taking in my first year of rabbinical school, I was taking a class on Tanakh. Well, it wasn't Tanakh. It was Torah for the first semester, and then the Nach, Nevi'im and Ketuvim, for the second semester. And my professor is Dr. Joel Garaboff, who is not a rabbi. He's a scholar. He's a biblical literature scholar. He teaches at ASU, among other places, and he's incredibly expert. And this is when we were still in person, so I was in a classroom with him. And we were talking about teaching college students, which is something that he and I have in common. And what had happened in the class that day was that he was teaching about the documentary hypothesis, which if people are unfamiliar with the documentary hypothesis, it means that there is some scholarship that began in late 18th century, 19th century Germany, which talks about the fact that there are multiple authors of Torah, right? And so that there have been authors and redactors, and there have been close linguistic studies of why it looks like there's different authorship. And this was rather shocking to some people in my class. Like, what do you mean? There were different authors of Torah. Torah came to Moshe from Sinai, from God. Like what, right? So I was talking to Dr. Garaboff about that a little bit, and I said, I'm familiar with the way that literature is written, and I'm familiar with editing, and I'm familiar with redaction, and I'm familiar with these ideas. And he said to me, so then, Jill, how is reading Torah going to be different than reading the complete works of Shakespeare for you? Or a book of poetry, or a book of, a Dickens novel? And it kind of gave me pause. And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, that's your task in the next 5 years, is to figure out how Torah is different for you than any other piece of writing. That's what you need to answer for yourself as a rabbi. Very grateful to Dr. Garaboff for showing me at least one way that the transition from secular literary study to Torah is both possible and holy work.
Thanks. Peter?
Hi, I'm Peter Levitan. I want to ask a question that I promised your daughter I wouldn't ask. I always find asking an interviewee, what are your biggest strengths, just invites a lot of happy talk. So I frequently ask interviewees, here's the real question, what do you see as your primary weaknesses? And to make it more amenable and less inquisitorial, I think I would ask, having already started serving in a rabbinic function and getting some experience, how would you like your rabbinic career to evolve, and in what direction, and what would you like to see bolstered?
I don't think that's an inquisitorial question at all, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Peter. I think one of my weaknesses is that I sometimes think that I have to be perfect at everything. And that's a problem, because I can't be. And I never have been one day, and I never will be one day. And there's a toxicity to that kind of perfectionism where, in my Mount SAC job, I survey 120 students. And the final question on the survey is, would you recommend this course to your best friend? And 119 of them will say yes. And one of them won't. And I'll be like, oh my God. What'd I do? Who is that? Right? How did I fail that person? That's something I have to work on all the time. I've learned that it is, I'm not going to say I've learned. I am in the process of learning and practicing that it's progress, not perfection. And it is prayer, not performance. It's not easy for me. It's tough. I get an A- and I'm crying about it. That's just dumb. But it's something that I struggle with. And I have to learn that I'm going to make mistakes. Take Rabbi Schuldenfrei out for coffee. He'll tell you, there's a whole list of them that I've already made here. And there's volumes of mistakes that I'm sure I will make. But if I can learn from them and try to move myself down the path a little bit more, that's a win. I hope to be less nervous when I read Torah. I hope to be less nervous when I run an entire service. I hope to be able to slow myself down and really get into the language of tefillah without thinking, oh my God, what I have to say next? What am I doing next? What page number is that again? I hope to be more comfortable in this role as I continue to make those mistakes and learn from them. When I started my teaching career, I was a hot mess. The students didn't think I was a hot mess, but I wrote every single thing down. I had every single lesson plan. And there was a night that I had to talk to a student the next morning about plagiarism. I was up all night. What am I going to say? How am I going to address this? What's my language? What if that student cries? What if that student yells at me? What if that student threatens me? By the way, all of those things have happened. But now, right? Now I can say all those things have happened, and I know how to do it now. Now I don't lose sleep over it, right? Last night, I lost a fair amount of sleep. In a couple of years, I hope that I will be more able to connect on an even deeper level to the tefillah and to the kahal, and that I can breathe a little bit more deeply while I'm making those connections.
All right, so Lauren, we have a question from somebody in our home audience. So Susan Porter wants to know
Susan.
how would you handle conflict amongst executives, clergy, congregants, board members? So really, what's your approach to conflict management within our community here? Which it never
So, hi,
happens,
Susan.
by the
I was
way.
gonna say,
It
which, of
never.
course, is not
I've not
existent.
experienced that in 7 years, but maybe it'll
Totally
happen. You never
theoretical
know.
question. Hi, Susan. Thank you so much for that question. By listening. By listening. Because conflict arises when people don't feel heard or understood, or that the perspective has not been considered respectfully or openly. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to agree all the time, or that I'm going to be able to assuage and smooth out everybody's conflicts. But I do really think that, and it sounds maybe a little bit too simplistic, but I actually think it's very, very difficult and very, very nuanced. But I learned this when I was studying CPE, which is, chaplaincy training, that people just need to be heard. And when people are heard respectfully, like I said, and with dignity, then we can say, okay, I understand your position better now. Let me tell you what my position is, and let's see where we can connect over this. The people here are all here for the same reason. The staff is here for the same reason, that the clergy is here for the same reason, the lay leaders are here for the same reason, as the volunteers are here for the same reason, the facility people are here for the same reason. Everybody is here for the same reason, and that is to build a Dot Ariel into a Mishkan where sacred space can be held by everybody. That is what we are doing here. Every single person is here for that reason. So politically they may be different, or they may think that an event should be run differently, or they may not like, this about the chair or that about the whatever, but everybody's here for the same reason. So if we just hear each other and make the space for that, that to me is the best way to resolve conflict. The nuts and bolts, we'll get to that later.
Hi, I'm Joette Lavenger. Jill, you mentioned that you, the type of Jewish household that you grew up in. As an adult, how has that changed, and how has your experience at AJR affected that and your 2 years here at Adat Ariel?
Immensely. So, first of all, I grew up davening in a reform shul, and had very, very little experience with a conservative shul. When we got married, before we got married, anyway, when we were starting our young family, we were kind of looking around. We live in South Pasadena. We lived in San Gabriel before that, so we were in that kind of part of the world. The San Gabriel Valley is not a booming Jewish metropolis, so we had some options, but not a ton of options. And truthfully, when I first went to PJTC, I was like, I don't know, these services are long. Really long. We joined PJTC because, not because we were particularly knowledgeable about conservative Judaism, because we weren't at all, but because it was the right place to start a family, raising a family. So our son Liam went to TK, transitional kindergarten, at B'nai Simcha, which is the Jewish preschool associated with PJTC, and then he moved our family in as he was consecrated into kindergarten and started the religious school. And then I started on the davening team with Cantor Ruth Berman Harris. And she gave me a ton of music to learn. And I was like, I don't even know this text. I've never even seen these prayers. Like, I knew Avinu Malkeinu and a little bit of Unatana Tokef and a little bit of Kol Nidre. And that's pretty much what I knew from the Machzor. But I learned the High Holiday stuff and kind of dove in because, well, it was learning, which is what I like to do. And then we got more and more and more involved in the rhythms of conservative Judaism by belonging there. Both of the kids went through rabbinical school there. Both became B'nai Mitzvah there. Both were madrichim in the religious school. Allegra tomorrow morning will not be on the hike because she's going to be the madricha in Sunday school. We're in that world. And yet, when I came here and met Rabbi Schuldenfrei, and he said, do you know how to daven the morning minyan? And I said, no. You have one of those here? Every day? People come to that? He said, yeah, you're going to need to spend the summer learning that. How's your Torah laning? I said, not good. He said, you know how to read trope? I said, no. He said, you're going to need to spend the summer learning that. So you go and do that, and you come back in August because you're going to have a morning minyan to lead. And you're going to read Torah once a month. So I spent the summer doing it. And I sat with text, and I sat with recordings, and I met with Cantor Ruth, who taught me the Tamim, and I did it. And I came back here, and I started leading the morning minyan. I wasn't good at it, but I did it, and cried once when I did a particularly bad job of it, and then just kept coming back and making fewer and fewer mistakes every time. I'm still not perfect at it, but I'm not losing sleep over it like I was before. My Torah reading today was way better than what I've done in the past. Like, I just am learning. So my personal practice has deepened and deepened and deepened and deepened and deepened, for sure. One more just little example of that. When I started at AJR, I needed to get a Koren Siddur. I didn't even know what that meant. Did not know what that meant. And I went to the first morning minyan there that was, so they do two different kinds of minyanim there. Some of them are the like Mishkan Tefillah, Reform, creative kind. That kind is easy for me. I just bring in a couple poems, boom. Or I write a poem, phenom. Right? The Koren, I was like, what are they literally, what are they doing? I had never heard Baruch She'amar in my life. I didn't know that there was more to the Ve'ahavta. I didn't know any of that stuff. I didn't know what Tachanun was. I didn't know that there were different nusach patterns to Sukkei de Zimra and Shachrit. I didn't know any of that, any of it. So what have I learned? How is it different? I mean, it's different in every possible way. Does that answer it? Great.
So I'm Ronnie Mardor. I'm teaching, I'm the song leader at the JLC. Sorry, lost my voice a little bit. And I wanted to ask you, so Adat Ariel is a multi-generational, right, community, 0 to literally 100. And I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts about the communication and basically collaborations between the different departments here at Adat Ariel, and if you have any ideas for the future, how to collaborate it together?
Sorry, I just want to clarify. Do you mean the staff or the people?
The people.
The people, yeah. The first thing I want to do is take down the delineations between those different subgroups of people. So I don't want people to say like, oh, I'm an MID person, that programming's not for me. Or, oh, I couldn't possibly take that class because I'm just a preschool parent, and that's not what I do, right? It's kind of what I said before. We're all here for the same purpose, and we're all seeking and searching a spiritual connection. So who cares how old you are, right? Who cares? And I would love to be able to do a kind of thing where we rebuild in multi-generational involvement. I've heard that sisterhood used to be like this a little bit more than what I know about since the time that I'm here, where there were younger women and older women, and there were kind of like almost little mentor, little friends, right? Somebody who knows how to bake challah comes to somebody who doesn't know how to bake challah, and they bake challah together. You know, what do they have in common? They have in common that they both want to connect. Who cares what their birth certificate says, right? And then maybe that woman who learned how to bake challah can take it to another small group of her friends, but then they can go and find, big sisters. I know that sounds kind of sophomoric, but I don't mean an 8-year-old and a 13-year-old. I mean a 50-year-old and a 70-year-old. Why can't it be like that? Right? Why can't it be where we have like a little special synagogue sister? Right? And we find each other. Okay? And I have to say, Sharon Garber is in the room. Sharon Garber is a perfect example. She didn't even know that she was doing this for me. But Sharon Garber, when I first came here, took my Elul workshop. She didn't know me from anybody. And she and her husband, Alan, came and gave it a shot and came to my thing. And then we started to talk. And I was on the brink of becoming a college mom. And I was all wrapped up in anxiety about this. And Sharon Garber took me to dinner. I mean, I wasn't anybody. I was the intern. Who cares about taking the intern out to dinner? Sharon did. And then not only did she take me out to dinner because she had 2 kids who have already gone through college, then she sent me a book. And she wrote a little card in that book, and she said, "This helped me a lot when my boys were going off. I hope it'll help you too." Now, nobody set us up as being shul sisters, but how come we can't be that? And how come we can't all have a little special somebody to look for when you come in to services? Maybe somebody you have lunch with. Maybe somebody you just send a card to who's not in your age group or not in your whatever. Your kids aren't the same age, but you can connect. That's the stuff. And it's the opportunities are right here. It's not even hard. It's just, if you build it, they will come. Thank you for your question.
We have any more questions? Jerome.
How slight, Jerome? We all know. Okay, all right.
So, since I'm in my 8th month of asking this question, according to the rabbi, I just want to know,
So you're involved in this other synagogue and you're involved here. What are some things that you like over there that you might want to bring here? What are some things that you found here that you might think would be of use to where you are in Pasadena?
That's a really great question, and I appreciate you asking it because I think it's also a question that we need to break down barriers, and that's a perfect way to do it. We all can learn from each other. One of the things that I have loved about what we've done at PJTC is what we experienced with both of our kids in terms of being B'nai Mitzvah parents. So what they do there is a little bit different. First of all of those kids who are preparing to become B'nai Mitzvah are in a class. They're still in Hebrew school. And so they meet as part of religious school. And they have a teacher, and their teacher is not their B'nai Mitzvah tutor, but their teacher is the teacher who's getting them ready for their B'nai Mitzvah tutor, if that makes sense. So they're learning trope, and they're learning tefillah, and they've already done some stuff in services, and et cetera. Well, what happens is at the beginning of the school year, all of those parents of that class meet. And they meet with the rabbis and with the executive director and with, everybody, the teacher, and everybody has a role in everybody else's B'nai Mitzvah. It's a little bit different than it is here. The Friday night services at PJTC are after dinner, so they start at 7:30. So there's an oneg after that. And for each B'nai Mitzvah, 4 non-simcha parents, does that make sense? 4 parents in the class whose kid is not the one, make the oneg for that family. So the family says what they want, and the other parents bake, and they cut up fruit, and they decorate the room, and they put out the nuts, and they make the party, the oneg. So everybody's oneg gets made by everybody else's family. It's beautiful. And all of those kids go to everybody else's simcha. And they present. So all of the kids go up to do the Kaddish Shalem, I think. What do you do? The Amidah, right? And then a kid presents the certificate, and another kid presents the class gift, and there's a real cohesion. And I have to tell you that my son Liam is in college this year, and his first time home from college was December, winter break. And you know what happened over that winter break? The Hebrew school kids got together for pizza, and the families. Now they're 18. This is 5 years later. Were they all there, every single one? No. But I'm going to say 2/3 of the parents were there. And the first kids they wanted to see were their shul friends, not their high school friends. They're shul friends. They have a text thing called Cool Jews. They text each other. What is it? Hebrew school peeps with plant emojis. That's your text thing. Liam's is Cool Jews, yours is Hebrew school peeps. It's a real thing. So that's something that we experienced as parents at PJTC, and I think I know it's a different system here in terms of the JLC and the way the kids prepare or whatever, but there's, I think, some room for us to make more connection with the B'nai Mitzvah families. That's one thing. The second part of your question is, what have I learned here that I don't see there? That I think would be a benefit there. I'm not a sports fan, but I'm going to use a sports analogy to answer that question. This shul has a much deeper bench. There's a much more knowledgeable kahal. That shul has a gabbai, and that gabbai is there every week, and she's the only one who knows how to be the gabbai. This shul has every Shabbat 2 different lay leader gabbaim. That's not something that they do. This shul has somebody else besides the cantor will daven shachrit. There's nobody over there who can daven shachrit besides the cantor. No one. They have the same 5 Torah readers because they're the only people who know how to read Torah. This is a different kind of kahal. And that temple, the people are lovely, but they don't have the knowledge base that I've observed here among the kahal. And I think that they would greatly benefit from a deeper bench.
One final question. No.
Sorry, Lorraine, I forgot you were sitting there.
No problem. You have the benefit and the burden of having been here for 2 years now. If you had one major change to make at Adat Ariel, and you've talked about the siloing and how you'd like to break down the barriers and the way people identify with respect to their children's place in education and that type of thing, or MID or whatever. But if there was one other thing that you could change at Adat Ariel, what would that be?
It has not been a burden for me to be here. It has only been a benefit for me to be here. There has been nothing but incredible warmth and welcome, patience, room to grow, and a clergy mentorship that if I had $1 million, I couldn't have paid for it. If I don't get this job, I will still consider this year and a half to be absolutely essential to whatever rabbinate I'm able to create for myself. If anything, the burden of the past year and a half for me has been that I couldn't do more because I'm pulled in 10,000 directions. I've never been to one Tuesday staff meeting. I teach on Tuesdays. One time, Rabbi Schuldenfrei said, "I'll see you in shul," I can't remember what it was, on Tuesday. And I said, "I'm not going to be here on Tuesday." And he said, "But it's Chag." And I said, "Not at Mount Sac, it's not." The albatross, I think, for me has been that I have wanted to immerse myself even more and have been limited in that. Because I've been limited in that, there are things that I don't know about this shul, like just basic stuff. It's not been hidden from me, I just am not here to learn it. And so I think what I want, this is not a problem of Adat Ariel, this is a problem for how it's been for me to connect to Adat Ariel, is that I just haven't been able to really be here. So sometimes something happens and I'm a little bit lost as to, like I feel sometimes like I'm running after a train and I don't always understand what's happening. That wasn't your question, but I wanted to say that because I just, I'm aware that there's still so much besides the Talmud that I need to learn about institutional workings. Okay, now I'll try to answer your question. The burden, no. The detriment that I see, sorry.
What would you change at Adat Ariel
What would I
if you were God and you could come down and automatically change something overnight at Adat Ariel? What would it be?
I would remove the fear or reticence that some people have to say and speak what they want to say and speak. I don't know that everybody always feels totally comfortable to be totally open. By the way, I don't think there's any place on planet Earth where that is true. So, but I do, if I were God and could change one thing, it would be for everybody to know that they could struggle and that they could be in the trouble of Judaism and still be held in this community with love and with understanding.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you again on behalf of the congregation, and you've done a wonderful job.
Thank you so much.
And I look forward to continuing the dialogue. So thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. And thank you all.
Shabbat Shalom.
Wait, Rabbi, can I just, before people leave, just one thing. We've put it out to the community. Herb Moore, who's such a valued longtime member of our community, is turning 100. And we've been trying to collect 100 birthday cards to deliver to him. So if you could take the opportunity the next time you come to a .rel, either in the clergy office or in the admin office, drop off a birthday card wishing Herb a happy century here. I think he's been with a dot that entire time also, even though we're not 100, but he's been here the whole time. So please, it's his 100th birthday is coming up. So this week, please stop by a dot and bring Herb a birthday card.
Hello, before you leave, my name is Rosalie Pachursky. Most of you know me here. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to lead a hike tomorrow. It's part of the evaluation process for our rabbinic intern. And please, if you're able to attend, it's a very easy walk. So don't think you'll have to climb mountains or anything like that. And it'll probably be just an hour long, and it's a leisurely walk. So please, if you're interested, email me. It's going to be at the, what's the name of the place? It's the Sepulveda Basin Water, what is it? Wildlife Preserve. And it's off of Woodley. It's between Burbank and Victory. It's open. I don't think it's flooded right now. I don't know. It should be open. Maybe we can can we pass by there today and see whether or not it's not underwater? If it rains, it's canceled. We'll bring the ark.
The instructions for those
Just
who are
come.
joining by the live
If it's
stream
not open,
are
go
in
back
the
home.
email from a .rel. Look forward to seeing you all there.
What are we called? Polka dot.